Welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, to create value, and to build what's next. I'm Preston Chandler, and I'm here with my co host, JL Heather. Together, we lead Centered. It's a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation, coaching, and strategy. JL and I are pretty excited about our guest for today. He sits at the intersection of creativity and technology and some really disciplined execution. And in our experience, that's where a lot of innovation efforts either scale or stall. So it's a good pivot point. James Weiss is the managing director of Big Drop Inc. It's a leading digital agency, and it's known for delivering some high impact websites, brand experiences, and some large scale digital transformation initiatives. James himself, he oversees Big Drop's integrated practice across all things strategy, UX, UI development, SEO, QA. That's a lot. Hopefully we'll touch on that a little bit in the interview. I think that's a really cool span of control. And he helps organizations modernize their digital presence while maintaining their design integrity, accessibility, measurable outcomes, all that kind of stuff. Surprisingly, he's a former competitive fencer. He's an accomplished musician. James, I sing as well, so maybe we can talk about some music stuff.
We got a band.
We got a band. James brings a unique blend of strategic focus, adaptability, and a creative rhythm to leadership. Qualities I think that show up in how he builds teams, how he structures systems, and how he delivers some of that complex digital work at scale. James, welcome to Breakthrough Innovation. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Let's jump right in with the first question. As you're looking at large scale, digital transformation efforts, where do they break down? Maybe even before they start to deliver real value.
Yeah, it's a really good question because it's often in the planning process sometimes either on the client side, more often than not on the client side, that we find that if there isn't complete alignment across all stakeholders in terms of what they're looking to get out of whatever product we're building, whatever engagement we're pursuing, that tends to not set us up well for success. And if we are trying to be that helpful partner that we're trying to be, without having that sense of alignment, it makes it really difficult for us to be able to execute properly. And I'll kind of go a little bit deeper into that. Usually when we're working with an organization and they're looking to have either an evolution or a revolution in how they're showing up, whether it's, a new website or an application or some sort of platform that they're building, or if we're building, some sort of proprietary technology for them, a lot of times what we find is that unless every sort of component of the business has had their opportunity to explain what it is that they need out of this new product that's being built for them, it's going to fall short of the mark for any of the other stakeholders, on the client side. What we do in our process is make sure that at the onset, we're taking in everyone's insight, everyone's perspective, so that when we have a roadmap to follow, we know exactly that it's going to align, or it's going to at least draw that connection back to all the information that we've taken in. And so the question is almost, how do you ensure that it's going to be successful rather than, what is going to derail it? Typically, if it's not right in the beginning, it's not going to be right in the end. So if we can get it right in the beginning, and that really is relying on our client partners to say, this is exactly what we need. We've done our due diligence, making sure that everyone has given us the parameters, the requirements, the things that we need out of this product. It makes our job a lot easier because it's just a more clear, direct line for production on our side. So I think it's on anytime you're engaging, a firm like ours or any sort of professional services firm, having a clear goal in mind and approaching that firm or that partner or that vendor with a very succinct, concise, but also very meaningful pathway forward is going to make sure that they're set up for success. And if it's not something that you can come to the table with, certainly on our side, that's part of what we do as a helpful partner, is trying to help you understand exactly where you are, where you could be, and building the roadmap to get you there.
But it's interesting, you mentioned setting them up for success. I'm assuming for the most part, success, from our perspective, typically success varies wildly, like how that's defined per
Yes.
client. But from your perspective, what are some of the common things that people should be looking at to help them make sure they're making progress, to maybe build up some momentum, to gain some something to celebrate, some excitement about progress? Like, what are some of the things you would measure and show off?
That's a great question. One of the things that we really try to do is help solve problems with what it is that we're building. Typically, when a client is coming to us, they're coming to us with something that's in place that just isn't cutting it anymore, or it's not working the way they need it to any longer, or they've just outgrown it, and so they need something to replace what's in their current operation. And obviously, we're seeing this from a digital marketing focus. We're looking at it holistically. We're looking at things like the brand environment. We're looking at how that's related to a digital presence in totality. And that may include a platform, may include an app or a website, like I mentioned before. Uh, we're trying to make sure that anything that we're going to do is either going to alleviate some of the pain points that they have right now with their product. It's going to be a value add for them in terms of them being able to do their work and make it more efficient for them to produce, so they don't have to worry about anything that gets them tied up when they're going through their own production process. And then obviously at the end of that, if it does all the things that we look for, and this is maybe more specific to your question, we obviously want to see improvement across the board. We want to see, engagement sessions increase, the duration of those, obviously increase. We want to see performance from a general perspective, from an SEO perspective, from now a GEO and AEO perspective. So all of those elements we're looking for. And I think there are two sort of sets of metrics that we look at. Have we done right by the client and helped them build something that they can scale without needing to be tethered to us as an agency? Can they fully own the product that we build? Are they trained up well enough to, take it in-house if they needed to? And have we given them something that is sure to perform right out of the gate better than where they're at now? If the answer is yes to that latter question, we know we've done our job properly. But there is one thing that comes to mind that I think is really funny is we were working with a really large healthcare partner. One of the metrics that they gave, and it was on a project for them internally. So something that wasn't going to be available to the public, but something that was going to be a useful tool for their staff. One of the metrics they gave us was doctor smiles. So it's hard to gauge because we can't necessarily see all the doctors and understand whether or not they're smiling or grinning at least. But I think when we follow our process in terms of really evaluating where we're at, what we need to do and how we need to get there, if we align those core components, we'll know we'll have a better chance of reaching those smiles.
I think one thing that you mentioned that really stands out to me is just focusing on the problem to solve. Too often when JL and I are helping out our clients, we find that they don't have a problem to solve, or rather their problem to solve is really just a solution. It's not actually what is the root problem. So how
Right.
often do you find that where your customers, your clients aren't giving you a problem, they're giving you a solution already?
So and that's a good point, because sometimes they're coming to us with, we'd like to explore, an opportunity, and that's us trying to do the problem solving on their behalf, as opposed to leaning on them to help them solve their own problem and helping us, help them get there. In cases where we're brought in as a partner to help them, I guess, consultatively figure out what the future could look like in terms of building something that's net new for them, or giving them a new pathway, something that maybe a value add to the business, or maybe an established sub entity under what they're doing. A new piece of proprietary functionality that simply doesn't exist and positions them a little bit better. Those are the projects that our team really gets excited about, because we get to flex our creative muscles.
Yeah.
We also are able to, get them excited about the work to come. And I think, part of what we were talking about just before we started is, aligning ourselves internally to make sure that we're going to be in the best possible position to support any sort of client engagement. And so if we're not necessarily the problem solvers in this specific scenario, what we can be are the solution architects and help them really get to where they want to be. And I think part of the beauty of the way we work is that we're completely agnostic on all fronts. When we're addressing, I don't want to call it necessarily a problem, but if there's, an item on the table that we need to focus on, we're not, we're not pigeonholing it into something that we've done before because we know how to do it. We're trying to find the best way to do it, and then offering options. This is where you could be if you went with option A, but also option B offers this. And then there's even sometimes in our design process where we lovingly refer to something as Frankensteining, where we bring multiple pieces into play. You get a little bit of A, you like a little bit of
Yeah.
B, we make option C. So, but yeah, I think that's really part of it is we're not always the problem solvers, but we are the solution, I guess, supporters.
So you've touched a little bit on teams and getting teams excited and motivated to participate. And I know that you're responsible for a large group of cross-functional people, strategy, design, engineering, QA, all that kind of stuff. So what have you learned about motivation, about creating alignment, about bringing those cross-functional teams together without slowing creativity down?
A lot of the work that I do, and I'm involved in the engagement from the very initial conversation all the way to the end of project. I may not always be in the day to day. And so it's important that the transfer of enthusiasm that I have from having the initial conversation gets woven into our internal onboarding process so that I know the team understands what my expectations are and why I felt this was the right fit for us. We don't always take on every project that comes our way, only the ones that we know we're going to accomplish the best. And what that really means is I'm looking for specific criteria that I know our team not only can do well, but if our team understands, excuse me, if our team understands that the project that they're about to inherit is a great fit for them, they're much more motivated to come to it with 100% effort and energy than if it was something that was not really in our wheelhouse, but we kind of took it on anyway. We've had issues with that in the past. I think every agency, every a business has always dabbled outside of their core competency. One, it's natural, right? You want to see if you can do it. Maybe it's another revenue opportunity for you. Maybe you have the chance to knock it out of the park. But when we get one of those sweet spot projects, I know the team is looking at it from the perspective of, well, we can really nail this. And that almost does the job for me. I don't need to motivate them any other way than just the nature of the work, which is also helpful. That said, I do want them to approach it like they would any other project. I want them to, be able to come to it with an objective focus, treat it like it was something almost entirely unique, but something that was, it's reminiscent of other things that they've done successfully. And I want them to be able to bring that enthusiasm to a new engagement. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Well, it's interesting, like, as we talk about it, you're getting into a lot of the human motivations and things like that, and something that I've been diving into recently, is I think it was Simon Sinek talked about how customer first design, like, that sort of, like, a customer-centered design was dead or should be dead, and it really should start becoming human-centered design just because that starts to really hit on both sides of the equation, your customer and your employees. And a lot of
Mhm.
what you've talked about is the employee side. I'm curious, as you nail the employee side, how do you see that, or how do you leverage that to really improve the relationship with the customer and the outcome for the customer? Like how do we really tie those two together? Because I don't think people always understand. It's not just about telling people what to do, but when they're really motivated, really bought in, when they see that they're being set up for success, it's not that they just get it done faster, they get it done better in a way they would have before. Like, how do you make that connection for people?
Yeah. Um, we look at it as kind of the stepping stone to a much larger partnership where we have the opportunity to grow alongside our client. Um, Usually, when a project is the first kind of core piece where we get to understand each other. We understand what the team is going to be responsible for, what the players are like on the client side. And that is motivating to a degree for the team on our side. But if we can see longer term value in a relationship that we've built, then I know that we're bringing that element to the client side. But I think one of the other pieces, to your point too, is also understanding that we are in the business of managing expectations. We're in the business of challenging assumptions. We are not in the business. I mean, there are certainly engagements that we have that are more transactional than others,
Right.
but I think the ones that we have for 7, 8 years, and some, longer than that, those are the ones where we're that sounding board, we're that consultative ear, and that helps us one grow. It gives us credibility with the client, and it helps frankly cement our relationship a little bit more and gives us a little bit more sense of security when it comes to that particular client relationship. Um, so I think those components help us kind of satisfy both sides of the scale.
Love it.
I mean, it becomes so important to figure out how to connect the people. And I think that's been one of the threads throughout this conversation is making sure that the people doing the work are connected to the problem to solve. They're connected to this motivation. They're connected to the value that they can bring. And James, we're running very quickly out of time. So the time flies really fast. So one last question for you.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for leaders who want to transform? What general advice do you have?
The things that I oftentimes find are there needs to be a longer term view anytime we are embarking on something together. We're not, I say solving a problem, but we're not coming up with a solution for 2 years. We want that solution to last for 5 years, for 10 years. We want to put it in a position to where if you needed to scale it from years 5 to 10, you had the opportunity to do that without needing to revisit the entire thing. What we're building is not going to be satisfactory if it has a short lifespan. If there's a strategic reason for a short lifespan, that's one thing. But if it's something that you want to have long-term value of, but you're really going to exercise it in a short-term play, it's not worth it. And part of what we try to help reframe is if this is going to be a strategic initiative for you, it needs to have a much longer life cycle. We're building it, excuse me. We're working on something that has a lifespan beyond the time that we're touching it, possibly. So what are we going to do to make sure that anything that we come up with is not going to be just rooted in strategy for now, but it's going to have that longer term thinking to where that strategy has the ability to adapt and you're not going to be locked into just what we did at the time. I think a lot of times when we take on projects, and we hear it a lot of times from clients who come to us, is that they've worked with another partner, they've had another vendor who built what they needed at the time and it was right, but had no real future thinking about how it was supposed to function beyond, or what if there was a scenario that required them to adjust. Anytime that, and especially in the marketing space, and I say it frequently, is marketing itself as a principle, it doesn't change. But the ways in which when you market, that absolutely does. And so if you're not offering yourself that, I don't want to say, that exit, but that way to pivot and not have it be such a hard, difficult task, then you set yourself up incredibly well for success. It's always important to, keep at least one eye on the future and one toe in the present. But if you're not doing that, you may find it's going to be challenging.
I love that, having that idea that you build for the present with the future in mind.
Yeah, you have to.
You can't just have the future or just have the present. That doesn't work.
Right.
James, very last thing before we wrap up. If people want to learn more from you, if they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, if you can find me on LinkedIn, James A. Weiss, and visit our website, bigdropinc.com. We're also rolling out some great stuff on social coming very soon, so take a look at that as well. You can find us on Instagram and obviously LinkedIn as well with our other business page. But definitely check out our portfolio on bigdropinc.com. I think you see a lot of stuff that looks great from a design perspective, is we work alongside various different brands, some of which I think you'll be very familiar with as well. So yeah, take a look, come visit us.
That's great. James, thank you again for such a good conversation and for insights about how we can connect the people, the work, to the real value that we're creating. I think that's a
Yeah,
wonderful insight for people to take away.
thank
For
you so much.
everybody else, sorry, what was that, James? I
Thank
spoke
you for
over
having
you.
me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And for everybody else, thank you for joining us into the end. Hopefully today's episode brought you value. And so we'd love it if you would leave a comment and talk to us about what you learned, about what you're applying into your work environment. And as always, please share it with a friend, share it with other people who could benefit from James's insight and perspective. And until next time, we will see you on Breakthrough Innovation.